everyone. Let me call this work session to order. First item is a roll call. All council members are present. Starting with the agenda items, Ms. Shermer, I'll turn it over to you to go over those.
The first item on the work session is a discussion on whether the council wants to consider a no smoking, no vaping district, the downtown entertainment district. This would be outside. This was just a request for discussion, and I've asked our downtown director to do a little research on what people around us have in place. There's no staff recommendation here, it's simply airing the issue to determine whether the council wants to do anything with it.
I checked with all of the surrounding cities, Covington, Monroe. You hear me better now? Covington, Monroe, Greensboro, Eatonton, Athens. Checked with a few other cities that have a high volume of tourism traffic. So smoking has, Covington has nothing in place except in their square park. There's no smoking on the square. Monroe has no ordinance in place. They did say that they bought receptacles as a gift for businesses that had employees that were smoking out front and put the receptacles in the back of the business, and that was to encourage them to smoke in the back of the businesses and not out front. Chamblee has a no smoking policy, and that includes the entire city, outside public restaurants, bars, workplaces, outdoor seating spaces, and parks. Rome has a smoke-free air ordinance that prohibits smoking in the Broad Street District, Town Green, all downtown parking decks, and Bridgepoint Plaza. That includes vapes, cigars, pipes, as part of their ordinance. If you look at their downtown map, it pretty much covers their entire downtown. Atlanta is smoke-free, all public places. Athens, all public facilities, including their parks. And then Greensboro and Eatonton have no smoking ordinances.
Thank you, Amber. Any questions for him?
Well, it would be, however it was.
Yes, the
Be
question
smoking,
is,
smoking only. I mean, we passed an ordinance that does allow outside,
signing, yes.
Just smoking only, yes. Simply smoking and vaping from what I understand.
And to be honest, I asked Ms. Shermer to add this to the agenda, and it's kind of a personal thing. I was at one of our downtown restaurants on the outside dining, and 2 tables up from me, I guess, it was a gentleman vaping, and I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but I believe that's what he was doing. Anyway, it was a cloud of smoke, and it was affecting everybody on the street. A lot of people were complaining about it, so I thought we should have some discussion if it's anything we would consider doing, maybe just some limits. Like Amber said, maybe around on the back side of the building, although it's not, our alleys aren't conducive for smoking either. Anyway, I just wanted to see if y'all wanted to have a discussion about it.
Any questions?
Anything for Amber? Thank you.
If we did maybe the park area, I think we already implemented no smoking in the park. I just think that if we get to no smoking inside the whole entertainment district area, then we're trying to ask our police enforcement department to enforce smoking and non-smoking. In restaurants, I mean, a lot of restaurants that allow you to go outside and sit, they're putting you outside because you could technically smoke in public outside. So I mean, I'm not a fan of smoking or vaping because I do think that they do be sometimes disrespectful and blow smoking, vaping areas like that. But I do see restricting the areas. If we restrict restricted, and we're asking our police department to enforce something. And we're taking an entertainment district that we're trying to create revenue, allowing revenue for our businesses to make money by being an entertainment district and allowing them to drink. Coming from nightclubs, drinking and smoking comes hand in hand most of the time. So, I mean, it's just, you know, we're restricting one area and we're trying to open up another. I mean, I think we did get a part. I don't know if we can maybe entertain a smoking area in the city, but I mean, just, you know, a public piece of something in the city that says this is where you smoke.
And I'm not sure either, is it possible to limit it just to certain locations like the restaurants? I mean, that seems to be where most of it happens, when people, you know, come outside from eating in the restaurant or sitting at the tables in front of the restaurants. It doesn't seem to be a problem anywhere else.
We could certainly craft a description that identifies the areas where you cannot smoke, the public areas where you cannot smoke. As far as, you know, maybe the tables right around the restaurant, we just need feedback from council, and then we'll work with council to bring back an ordinance that does that.
A lot of people sit outside, so
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that's why they sit.
we can sit out on the sidewalk.
We might not, but I can't do it.
Right to your side.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
What I'm saying is, I think a lot of people sit outside just to smoke. And, that would be, I think that would be a detriment to the restaurants. In my opinion. I mean, I don't smoke, but I don't want them smoking in the restaurant next to me, but if they want to go outside and smoke,
Smoking is one thing, but that vaping puts off a lot more smoke than a regular cigarette.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't want to restrict vaping, I don't have a problem with that. I'm like Charlie, if they want to sit outside and smoke, they can sit outside and smoke. But the vaping, I feel like it invades on a lot of other people. I mean, it's a lot worse than smoking.
Well, I think smoking and vaping is all the same, smoke is smoke. And a lot of people don't smoke, they enjoy, coming to our downtown area, enjoy eating outside. You know, people are not just going outside because they want to smoke, people really enjoy the entertainment of being outside. I mean, you know, you have to think about kids, and you want to come out and enjoy yourself, and the next table, 2 tables down, somebody's smoking. And, you know, so, I'm totally for restricting smoking in our downtown area.
Okay?
Well, and if y'all will draft something for our next work session to look at.
We can. It sounds like the general direction is restricting vaping in the entire downtown area and restricting smoking by the outdoor dining and the park, or restricting both in the entire downtown front of the buildings area and park.
Maybe you could look at designated smoking areas, you know, where you can smoke and it's not intrusive. You know, there are probably several ways to look at it, but,
An attorney, can we identify vaping and say no vaping? I mean, is that, we can say no vaping? Okay, but they can smoke a cigarette, but they can't vape?
I don't normally see people vaping as much. I see smoking
More.
more.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
and I've not witnessed a lot of vaping. I did that one night. I mean, seriously, there were clouds of smoke coming from that table. There were 2 people there doing it, and it was almost like you were looking for a fire truck to come by.
Like I said, it'll be one of the things that the police is gonna enforce. I watched a lady yesterday, or the day before yesterday, get out the gas station with a cigarette in her hand, and I politely pulled off. I didn't even get gas, and said, I'll come back. I mean, that is clearly a sign right very sensitive to smoke. You know, I mean, people that smoke, sometimes they tend to don't think about others when they're doing it, because they'll stand right in front of the door and get their last drag of cigarette and walk inside the store. And there goes the smoke coming right behind them inside the front entrance of the store. And that's that Fresh Way and the other stores as well.
We'll take a crack at, coming back with a defined area that's more restrictive for the downtown, but designates some reasonable smoking areas. And we'll bring that back to work session, so that you have a chance to be comfortable with it before it goes to ordinance level. Okay?
Thank you. Anything else on that? Okay, next item is the preliminary sidewalk plans, the TAP grants.
All right, the TAP is the Transportation Alternatives Program, that the city applied for federal funding on East Hightower and North and South Cherokee. And it's an 80% federal, 20% local funding stream through the Georgia Department of Transportation. We are administering these projects, which means projects, and then the GDOT for the 80%. And out here. So the two projects we have are on East Hightower on one side of the road, and on North Cherokee on both sides of the road, and South Cherokee, both sides of the road. The survey is complete. We have concept designs. We have an environmental review that is just beginning. And we're at the point where we could schedule concept plan open houses. We have worked with the design engineer up to this point to emphasize avoiding land acquisition, because that is expensive and it delays, especially with federally funded projects. It is very expensive and delays by years a project. Is the sound okay for you all? Are you hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So if we are able to move ahead efficiently, and this is a very complicated process because of the federal environmental review requirements for this specific grant program. And we are one of the first projects to go through it, so we're working our way through. Anyway, if we are able to go efficiently and avoid land acquisition, it's possible for us to get into construction in 2021-22 or next fiscal year. So what I wanted to do tonight was share in general with council, and I know you can't see a whole lot of this, but share in general with council what the plans are looking like, and if you're comfortable, we would then move ahead to schedule an open house meeting for the public to take a look. And we would do that as an open house, not a gathered meeting, so people could come one by one, take a look and get individual assistance. So on East Hightower, the goal of the project is to get people from between downtown and the residential area off Vine Street. The challenge, one of the big challenges for this project is pedestrian traffic across the bridge, because it is not wide enough for 2 lanes of traffic and a sidewalk, and it is not structurally designed to add a sidewalk to it. So we have wrestled with this, and our recommendation is to make the bridge one way for vehicular traffic and allow for a pedestrian walkway. And we think that would do a couple of things. Number one, it would be cost effective and have a safe pedestrian access. And secondly, it would help us to prevent, restrict, make more difficult trucks crossing that bridge, who shouldn't now. So the recommendation, and the sidewalk design is kind of built into this, is to have the Hightower Bridge over the CSX tracks, one way to the south, and have the traffic lanes on the east, the traffic lane on the east, and the sidewalk on the west, so that you have the biggest turning radius from the fire station downtown to go south across the bridge. And then at the four-way stop, there's of course two-way traffic on East Hightower and Jones and Spring Street. So this exhibit shows that under the sidewalk project, we would build a curb, so there would be a curb between the pedestrian area and the traffic. And then the four-way stop would remain, and we'd have crosswalks crossing over to the continuation of the sidewalk. And then we would have delineators at near the intersection of Willow and the bridge, East Hightower, to allow for that transition. If that is something that is supported by council and at the open house, we would paint that out and use delineators or plastic barricades to implement it in a temporary way early in a test form. And again, we have a year to work through this. And this is what the temporary striping would look like. The green would be the walkway, and then we have delineators, and then there would be a one-way pattern of traffic to the south. Moving on the East Hightower sidewalk, you can see a little bit on this exhibit, the sidewalk coming across the bridge and then continuing to the crossing at the four-way stop. And then the sidewalk would continue on the south side of East Hightower. And it would include a new curb and gutter and drainage pipe, and the sidewalk would be up close to that curb and gutter, and that's how we would avoid any land acquisition impacts as well as utility relocation impacts. And the sort of the darker blue that I know is difficult to see here, but it shows where there would be a drainage pipe in what is currently the ditch under the proposed curb gutter and sidewalk improvement. And then that sidewalk continues on the south side of East Hightower to Vine. So that's the general overview for East Hightower. I will say that we did extensively look and talk about the one-way across the bridge with our operations departments, fire and police, and the engineers, and looked at kind of schematics and turning radiuses in coming up with the recommended direction and marking. On South Cherokee, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, before you move forward on East Hightower, you did look at the turning radius, because it seems to me like it's tight now, even with 2 lanes accessible,
Yes.
to get a fire truck or any other vehicle like that through there. Of course, it's restricted to big trucks, to 18-wheelers, so it'd just be those occurrences when we utilize the bridge. But just to make sure that we are putting that into consideration, the turning radius. And also, you mentioned a 20% match from the city's part. Is that with SPLOST dollars?
Yes. Yes, we are looking and did look at the turning radius, and from the downtown direction turning south, this actually creates a bigger turning radius than exists now by making the bridge one way and pushing the travel lane on the basic far side as you're making that turn. And then as you get to the four-way stop side, there's much more room there for a bigger turning radius. But it is also true that and we have time enough to decide this evening, if council is comfortable moving ahead with this, we can do it with paint and plastic delineators, so we can make sure what we set up is functional for the vehicles that need to access. It's one thing to do auto turn on a computer, it's another thing to actually drive the vehicles through it. Okay, then moving on to South Cherokee, the sidewalks would be on both sides of the road, replacing the existing curb and gutter, and with drainage where needed. In a lot of areas it can tie into the existing drainage. And this project would pick up where the sidewalks end, just south of the bridge, a little bit beyond Cannon, and extend past Ash. Would go about 2/3 of the way to Spring. And also on South Cherokee and on North Cherokee, at the concept level, it appears we're able to completely remain within the existing right-of-way and avoid utility relocation costs, which makes our money go faster and us get to construction more quickly.
Why would we not go all the way to Spring Street?
The only reason we wouldn't go all the way is money. The grant limit that we applied for was $1 million for North and South Cherokee and $1 million on East High Tower. And so the scope of the project was based on how far that money would go. We put $1 million to East High Tower and $1 million to Cherokee. On North Cherokee, the project would also be on both sides and would replace the existing curb and gutter and add drainage where needed, where we can tie into existing, we would. And except where the existing sidewalks end at Oak and continues north past Annie P. Henderson, across the next property to about the location where the nursing home is. And, which is not quite to Brookstone, but again, same situation. The scope is based on how far the money would go. So that's the overview of those two SAP projects. And the two questions I have for council, are you comfortable with us, just very conceptual level, moving ahead to an open house so the public can take a more detailed look at this and we can get input on the bridge direction? And then the second question is any council input on the bridge?
Do you, are you proposing to have a meeting just for East High Tower to begin with, or for all three sections?
I think I would recommend doing one for East High Tower and then a different one for North and South Cherokee, just, and again, an open house, several hour framework, just so that we can avoid crowds.
Speaking for myself, I know we've had East High Tower on the books, for a very long time to put that sidewalk, so I think that's an appropriate place to begin. And the drawback has always been how we get across to the other side, the Willow Drive. So, I like the plan, the way it looks, what I can tell looking at on the screen up there. I would look forward to seeing a better view of it. I would encourage you to do that. Council agree?
Coming from East High Tower, I've always wouldn't agree with it for a couple of reasons. Is that, first we just made it a one-way. And in order for me to get to town now, I gotta go four-way to Spring Street, North Cherokee, back to town. And if I'm going to Frenchway, I guess I would go to bypass. If I'm going to Holly Street, then I'm going to go about a mile around just to get to, right across the track. Golf cart friendly, now my golf cart has to go down, up Spring Street, back around Highway North Cherokee. I don't think that's permitted. I think I would have to go to Cannon and back around in town.
Well, let me ask you this, have we exhausted all other options? I know we looked at going under the railroad a few times, and I know we have a lot of resistance there. Is this the only option that we have?
This is the only option that we have with the funding resources we have available. It is not possible to expand the width of the bridge to structure of the bridge. It is, the railroad is not going to allow, and I wouldn't recommend using the tunnel that's under the railroad. It's small. If there were to be a new tunnel put under the railroad, we would have, of course, the railroad permit process, but more than that, I have had experience with other tunnels under roadways, and they are always, in my experience, they always safety concern, just because it's dark and it's, it's a hiding area. So I wouldn't recommend going under, I would recommend going over. So the options we have are to make the current bridge work, or to not provide for pedestrians across the bridge and seek additional funding for a standalone pedestrian crossing.
Or we could stop at the top of the hill at the four-way. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah, you can stop the
For now,
pedestrian.
stop at the four-way. We're still looking, and people are looking at the mill area as a part of Jones Drive. So maybe eventually we can go down Jones Drive and work you back around into town that way. I mean, it's traffic it's walking on the road, but for the amount of people walking on the road, do we need to make it a one-way? I mean, it's not like they're exercising. I mean, they are getting up to town, but it's not as many people get into town that we need to make it a one-way.
I got a question. What is the chances of going down to the end of Oak and Willow, where they come and intersect, and raising the road and go across and come back to Hightower that way?
Going down to what and Willow?
Going down to the intersection of Oak and Willow,
Oak and Willow.
where they come together right down below where we're talking about. Raise the road
Mhm.
and get CSX to give us a crossing there, and build a road over there, and that would give us a crossing. We could build sidewalks there and come up Willow, and they could come to town that way.
So right now.
So you wouldn't have to cross the bridge. That way you wouldn't have to make a bridge one way. I look at it as, we have a hard enough time because of the streets that we have. If you come from this way, there's only one way to get here. If you come in from that way, unless you go a long way out of the way, there's no way to get to the middle of town. So if we make that one way, then we basically cut town off to a lot of people, because they ain't gonna come that way. They ain't gonna come to town. They're gonna go the freeway, and they're gonna go back around the bypass, and they're not gonna come to the merchants in town.
In your current proposal, how far down Willow are you proposing the sidewalk to go?
Just to the, it just goes across the bridge.
Not as far as Oak Street.
No, but, I mean, it does
The
not,
modified plan went down to Oak and built,
There's not enough room on, the railroad probably owns part of the road down through there anyway, with the right of way. If you would put a sidewalk down through there, it'd have to be on the left-hand side going towards Stanley, because there's not enough room on the right-hand side because of the bank. So you would only have one side, if you would have to build sidewalk down there. And we've got some sidewalks on Oak and Holly. Eventually, we could tie all that together if we made a crossing there. And it still would give access to town and sidewalks down there, and we wouldn't have to make that bridge.
Because 90% of the people walking are not making it to the bridge anyway.
Now, they cross.
They're crossing railroad tracks.
They crossing down there, what I'm talking about, it.
Yeah, they're crossing over there.
so that would be an additional aerial crossing,
And will it just be just like a road crossing, just
Right.
raise the road?
a bridge.
There used to be a road that come across through there anyway, through that trailer, what used to be a trailer park right there. There's an old metal shed out there, and they used to be a crossing there somewhere years ago.
Well, we could certainly, and it's absolutely direction, if the council's priority is to maintain the two-way traffic on the bridge and not address the pedestrian crossing and plan for another pedestrian crossing as a standalone project, we can certainly do that.
Because I'm pretty sure that the railroad at that point right there, they're gonna require us to put up crossing arms and all that stuff right there. But it would be a lot more beneficial for us to do that than it would be to, I think, cut traffic off the town.
Okay, excuse me.
Who owns the bridge? Is it railroad or we?
We own the bridge,
We own it.
but the railroad owns the air rights.
I think that, I agree with Steve. You can make that one way, that's gonna be a problem. People coming back from that side of town to get down there, half of us get home.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, for sure. So it sounds to me like we'll drop the bridge changes, carry on with the sidewalk, go forward to the open house, and look at a future pedestrian crossing.
We're gonna save enough money to put some more of that overall where you do it.
Or here's that, you know, the people request that I've had, or people have spoken with me about, is to continue on to Freshway. I don't know how much foot traffic there is up through there, to be honest with you, but I know that request is out there, and you're not getting close to Freshway with more Cherokee sidewalk that you're talking about now, so.
It would have to be a follow-on project, and we can certainly do that. I guess the alternative, well, I think as far as we are down the path, it would have to be a follow-on project, but the quicker we can complete this, the quicker we can get in line for the next continuing federal funds to carry on, because priority goes to those that complete the things that they seek funding for.
Well, with our 20% match, we'll still have the money in our SPOS money to match the next 2 million, right? Because the first 2 million is going just, I mean, our 20% match is in, just on the East High Tower project, not what we had previously for the.
Both North and South Cherokee and East High Tower, those matches were covered. And you're correct, I'm thinking through the additional, we'd have to look at the balance in transportation under the SPOS, but also if the T-SPOS passes, that provides additional fund potential for match for additional sidewalk projects.
Plus, it could fund that road crossing.
That's right. That's right.
So in this project, would that include the, we still putting in the sidewalk from East High Tower Trail?
It does still include the sidewalks on East High
So
Tower.
we're just gonna stop at like a 4-way stop sign?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. All right. You good?
Good.
All right. The next item on the work session is for council to discuss work session scheduling. And the question is, would council like to schedule a separate night of the month for work sessions or day than the regular meeting? Staff is happy to do whatever you prefer.
5:30 is pretty early to have a meeting. We were having dinner, and it changes a lot among folks. I have no objection to staying at 5:30, but I think it'd be nice if we had another work session night sometime during the month, that we don't have to worry about a 1 hour limit on it, and we can talk about things that need to be discussed and ready for council.
You good?
Situation we run into more often than not, and I asked Ms. Sherman to put this on discussion tonight, is that our work sessions tend to run long, and I prefer to start, it's just my preference, to start the council meeting at 6:30 like it's supposed to be, versus waiting on the work session to finish. Sometimes it runs 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, and sometimes we've had to call the work session after we ended regular session. So it's, to me, basically, we've got quite a few things going on, some ordinances we need to work on, et cetera. It would be better even if we just do it, for a specified time, maybe through the end of the year to see how it works. And, have it on a separate day. That way we give ourselves flexibility. If we need more than an hour, we can do that without pushing up against a council meeting. So my proposal would be not to have a work session directly in front of the council meeting, but to have it on a separate day so we can have more time.
I have no objection to that.
Yeah, I would prefer to do the same, but maybe 6 o'clock for, I know me and Steve sometimes, we push to get down the road, so we did the work and then, bring it to the council meeting so we can get a better understanding and have all our questions at the meeting, so, I think that helps.
Well, I'm in agreement with moving it. I have never liked the work session to be right before the council meeting, because I don't like taking stuff off that agenda and then turning right around and having another meeting, putting on that agenda and then having to vote on it.
Right.
That way, if we have a meeting before the meeting and we're gonna move something to the agenda at our work session, that gives the citizens time to, they have a problem, let us know about it instead of moving it right to the agenda and voting on it.
What would you? Something like 2 weeks before council meeting? We'll make it during 2 weeks and 2 weeks or whatever it is, and give a chance to digest the stuff and get it back on the agenda.
I was,
There's still stuff that we have to move quicker than that. Sometimes within a week.
we could do it 1 week before the council meeting or 2 weeks before, what, 2 weeks before, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, if we stick with our third Tuesday for the regular council meeting, which I don't believe there's any objection to, I would look at the week prior to, the first Tuesday is the commissioners meeting, and there's a couple of others that happen that I personally like to attend, so I wouldn't want to interfere with that, although it's not a big deal. But the second Tuesday, that would be, I think it is a good fit for me, and I don't know about everyone else. Do we have any board meetings? And I mean, we don't have to, I don't think we have to do it on the Tuesday either. I mean, we could probably work in on another day of the week. Not a Friday.
All right, the second Tuesday is HPC.
Not a Friday, Saturday, no.
Yeah.
Before, then you're gonna have a hard time getting things on the agenda if you've got to post the agenda a week before. It kind of
Post it.
narrows that opportunity
Right.
to settle something in a work session and get it on the agenda for the next week, because we have a week requirement for posting.
Do we know what Monroe is? That's how they,
They have a work session the first Tuesday and their council meeting the second Tuesday.
they do it.
So, you know, we can do it similar to that, or like you said, Tyson, Tuesday is not a given, it doesn't have to be on Tuesday. Barbara, is there a conflict with the second Tuesday?
HPC is on the second Tuesday.
HPC,
What about that Monday?
This, I think we're good the Monday, second Monday of the month.
That would give an additional day to get items from the work session.
That would be
To the
perfect.
regular meeting and still make it 7 days.
so the second
So that
Monday.
time will work for you?
It would.
So I would say we want it to be the Monday of the week prior to the regular council meeting, which normally would be the second Monday unless it's a weird.
I might have a meeting on the first Monday.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
I think I have a meeting on the first Monday, right? Did we said the first Monday or the second?
Second Monday.
Yeah.
So it'd be 1 week and 1 day prior to the regular council meeting.
Yeah, I have a meeting on the second. So much Monday, I'm sorry.
What about the first Thursday? That gives us about 4 more days for the agenda items.
So the first Thursday's fine. Okay.
So there's no board conflict with the first Thursday?
No,
What about that?
First,
You make it at 6:30, same time?
I would,
6:30 is good with me, or
6:30 is good with me.
I think that's a good time.
it's easier to remember if they're at the same time.
Is that something we need to move to the agenda to vote on, or is that, okay?
If you want to start it in August,
I don't have any problem starting in August, y'all. Someone will move that to the agenda.
So it's Thursday, first Thursday and second Thursday? Third Thursday.
First Thursday.
Sure, this is the reminders for the week.
Okay, if there's no other discussion on that, equipment replacement and depreciation.
It's a program to sustain planned replacements of city vehicles and equipment that have a value of over $10,000. And as you all are aware, and our city is aware, unfortunately, we don't have regular planned replacements. We end up with old equipment that is unreliable, potentially unsafe, and leads to inefficient operations. So the outline of a plan is to identify the assets or equipment to be included, determine the cost, determine the service life, fund a portion of the purchase price of each of those vehicles over the service life, so that when it comes time to replace, the funds are there. So the recommendation that I presented in May is a draft schedule, was to replace the equipment that we have budgeted, we're able to budget in the current year, and to take care of as much of the old, unsafe, unusable equipment as we could. Secondly, and that's what you have before you, is finalize an equipment depreciation and replacement schedule, which identifies the equipment and its cost and its replacement schedule. And we also, in that, and it's a little confusing to follow, but also in that as we replace a piece of equipment, if what we're replacing still has some usable life, we can move it to another purpose and surplus the worst equipment first, basically. We still have a number of 2005 trucks, for example, that are in operations. And so what you have on that big schedule identifies in the surplus column the things that we need to get rid of this year, as well as identifying the replacement. Most importantly, in addition to showing you each piece of equipment, it identifies how much we need to budget each year in order to fund annually the depreciation of the equipment, so that we can build that fund to sustain the regular replacement going forward. So what you have this evening is that detailed schedule. The next steps, and that schedule was developed with extensive department head involvement. It provides a framework for regular funding. And as we work into it, it's going to improve our cost efficiency and our operations reliability, and also allow us to get rid of some equipment that is unsafe or unreliable, and that reduces our insurance costs too. So our next steps would, the schedule that's before you will become part of our next capital improvement plan. And like the capital improvement plan, that schedule is a multi-year replacement schedule, but we would look at it each year. So we make sure that we budget or plan for replacement of the worst equipment first. And then, as we complete the audit, we would take a look at any fund balances that exceed target, our targets for each fund. Any excess there would be allocated to building that equipment depreciation fund. And then finally, that equipment depreciation and replacement you would see in the annual operating budget recommendation each year. So it's a framework. We have enough now to actually implement it as part of the next budget cycle. And I wouldn't recommend going through line by line, but you have the details, and I'm happy to answer any individual questions offline on any individual pieces of equipment.
All the items that you have marked yes under surplus, those are the ones you want to say.
Those are the ones I want to what?
Want to surplus.
Yes, yes. And there's some trailers and some other things too, but yeah. And in accordance with prior council policies, the way we surplus them is to put them on gov deals with information and get bids on them, so we can get the most value we can for our older equipment. happy to answer any other questions council may have.
Any other questions from Ms. Sherman?
The code enforcement, the 2014 Dodge Charger, we have it together, but we're not gonna surplus it, I guess it's nowhere to go.
I'm sorry, which one are you looking at?
The code inspector?
Oh, yeah, code inspector, so it is being that is a police vehicle that is being removed from police service, but we don't have a vehicle for the code officer, and the truck that the code officer was driving was one of the 2005s that was breaking down regularly, so that's an example of just rotating out one of the better pieces of equipment that would be surplus if we didn't have a need for it for code inspection. And the code inspection is just a part-time during the week, and it's within town, so not high risk. And it does have a nice seal on the side of it now, city seal that says code inspection. So I do want to give a shout out to especially Public Works Director Jason Langley, who has spent a lot of time taking a look at our equipment and coming up with ways to do the most with what we have and move out the things that we don't need and make sure and move out things that we're not using so that we have the equipment we need to be as efficient and effective as we can. And then also the police department similarly has done a lot of the same. Your fire equipment, you see one of the total impact on the general fund each year is about $200,000. That totals on the bottom for the share of equipment depreciation, but almost half of that is pre-funding the replacement of our large fire trucks. And usually, and right now, we are lease purchasing those, so we have a loan that we're paying off for the new ones, and we're also, if we fully fund this, pre-funding the replacement. Usually you wouldn't do both, but we want to get from one to the other, so we may have to ramp that up. But this is a great framework for us to move forward on, and I think will put the city in a much stronger position going forward.
Is this the C meter on the backside of 2006 Ford 250? Centimeter? Not centimeter.
Cemetery on the bottom?
The bottom of the,
Yeah,
to the
it's
right.
it's cemetery, it's a 2006 Ford F-250 Super Duty, and that's what they're using to take the mowers to and from the cemetery. So, it's old, but it's pretty reliable, and that's, and how they get the equipment to and from the cemeteries for maintenance.
That was a question, because we only got $128,000.
Yeah.
While we talk about this, is the new 2017 Dodge 5500 that we keep taking to the shop,
Yeah.
what have they decided they're gonna do about that?
Well, the Public Works Director's been working on, with the dealer and manufacturer on trading it in. Right now, it's on the streets and operating while the other brush truck is getting its annual maintenance. It's been operating reliably for 7 days now. So right now it's operating, but I think as we've talked about before, we don't think that's a good piece of equipment and needs to be, the dealer and the manufacturer need to take it back.
Anything else from Ms. Sherman? Hearing none, we stand adjourned, and we'll start the regular meeting at 6:30.
Oh,